Moment to the server. Let's see if just confirm that we are in fact recording. Let's see. Yes, it looks like we are. Okay, fantastic. Welcome, welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you are with me. I'm super excited to be able to offer this. And very honestly, I was just kind of thinking, how can I add some value to an incredible community, a community that I have belonged to for a really long time. And I'm going to get into that soon. In a time where frankly, we're all struggling. We're all struggling with our situation. Many of us, if not everybody here, is at home at this point, not able to work, not able to make a contribution. And so I just wanted to take a moment and welcome you for being here, or thank you for being here and welcome you to this conversation. My goal is to add a lot of value, but I also really wanted to be able to create kind of like a mini community, even if it's just for an hour. But it's an opportunity to connect with like-minded professionals around a topic that frankly is going to help us hopefully get through this very difficult situation, as well as help our students moving forward. And I am hopeful that if you are in conversation, regular conversation with your students as the coronavirus process unfolds, that you'll be able to share some of the nuggets that you learned today. And you may even want to consider telling them that you participated in this webinar, because they should know that you're continuing to learn as much as you want them to continue to learn. So it's a powerful message, I think, for us, all of us, to consider. And I really, really hope that our time together will create the value that you deserve for finding the time, because frankly, I know, just so that you know, in full disclosure, I have my kids at home as well, and I don't have the most soundproof workspace in my house. And as a result, there may be a little bit of background noise here or there. And it's only just part of the, I guess, the live experience that we're all dealing with in our mini universes. So I'm assuming many of you have kids at home as well. You can certainly comment there if you would like to share what's going on. Let us know. The main thing is, let's learn, let's focus. And if you do need to step away, the good thing is it is all going to be recorded and hopefully available on demand. So if you want to go back and listen, if you want to share it with your colleagues, all of that is an option. And so that is that. So enough of talk about you guys. Now I can take a moment talking about me. Just kidding, but here we go. Just so that you know who I am and how I got here. So for many years, I was a classroom teacher, taught everything basically from K to college in one variation or another, either directly as a teacher or as a school leader. And I do a lot of professional development. And one of the topics that is particularly relevant, not just to today, but to teachers in general, as we deal with students who struggle with attitude and with focus and with fortitude and the ability to persevere and all that good stuff, is mindset. And so many schools are reaching out to me to talk about mindset. And that's why I figured I would begin with this topic. I will share with you information later about a follow-up second offering, also mindset related. You might have noticed that this was part one. So part two will be offered this coming Thursday, same time. I will be sharing the registration link. And if you found our conversation, or if you find it to be really valuable, I would certainly encourage you to block out some time for that one as well, because we are going to go deeper. But that's really what I do. I help teachers and school leaders to focus on advancing their academic programs by providing engaging, differentiated instruction built around clearly defined learning objectives. So what do we want to accomplish? How do we do so? How do we do so in a way that's engaging with active participation, really understanding what students know and providing them an environment in which they really want to put their best foot forward, not just in terms of mindset, but in terms of the kind of work that we are offering them that's going to most effectively help them reach their goals. So you're welcome at this moment, if you'd like, to share with me what attracted you to this topic, what it is that you hope to learn. I do a pretty good job at scanning the chat. I can't say that I'm going to be able to respond to everyone, and I do apologize for that. But I really hope that you do it, because even if I don't see it, or at least comment on it, I will try to see it, number one. And number two, would definitely want your colleagues and peers who are on this call to be able to see what drove you as well, what you're looking to learn. And by the way, I can, thank you for that, Lori, and I'm looking forward to seeing other responses as well. I can, what did I want to say here? So I think the idea is that, yeah, I can incorporate your feedback even if I don't have it as part of today's presentation. Number one, I can ad lib, possibly. And number two, incorporate it into my next offering. So let's keep that going. Thank you, friend Sesko, as well, for that. Growth mindset is a virtual learning environment, in a virtual learning environment. Oh, that's very important. Yeah. How do we communicate those messages even if we're not physically present? And by the way, I do hope that you are noticing in terms of my presentation, there's a lot of adrenaline flowing because I'm excited about what we're doing. I do get excited about every topic that I present, whether in person or virtual. But I do hope that while you are presenting your content virtually, just as a quick sidebar to our core conversation, when you present it, try to do it as if your students are physically in your space. Maybe you could see them via video. That would be very valuable as well, because I find that my affect increases significantly when I can better visualize my audience. And I think that that is something where, when we're talking about a virtual space, it's much harder. As you know, there are many challenges with the distance. So trying to sort of cross that bridge and create more connection, keep everybody focused, yourself as well as others, I think is a huge benefit. And thank you all for the additional comments. Erica, Sabrina, keep them coming. Love to see what you're focusing on here. Growth mindset is so powerful. Let's unpack it. Okay, so here are the objectives. As we know, every great lesson begins with a set of objectives. And I'm going to be circling back to these objectives a little bit later to make sure that they were met. Now, normally when I have objectives, I want everybody who's participating to be able to do something. So let's take a look here at the 4 different components. And here are some things I'm going to ask you to do when you are, what's it called? When we are finished. Number 1, I'd like to be able to define the terminology. So think about this. What is fixed mindset? What is growth mindset? And what is mindset in general? Number 2, we're going to focus on offering examples of each to make sure that you have clarity about what growth mindset looks like, as well as what fixed mindset looks like. Number 3, to list benefits of promoting them within our students. We're going to focus primarily on the students today, but I do hope that you are also thinking about benefits for yourself as teachers, as well as for the parents in which you interact, as you know, because frankly, even if we weren't in Corona reaction mode, this is something you want everybody within your school constituency to be developing. But now in particular, because of the fact that we are remote and dealing with the challenges, we want everybody to think with a growth mindset. If they're dealing with technology issues, if they're dealing with issues of managing the children at home or managing their workload, there's a lot. You know, my wife, we're getting these emails from the school. It's a little bit less tech oriented, but still they're trying their best. And we're printing up papers and giving them to our kids and trying to keep everybody on schedule when they need to be calling in or logging in, et cetera. That alone is a lot of work. And I'm not sure if you're all experiencing that, but if you are, you probably know that that also has a mindset component to it. And then finally, to discuss ways to develop it with our students, which is really the actionable takeaway here. So I hope that we're going to really deliver not just some theory and some ideas, but make it practical in a way that you can use it immediately in your conversations, in your lesson planning, and in life in general. So please, if you have any questions or comments as I go, please do not hesitate to put them up in the chat. I do see things as they are being typed, and I hope that, Kim, your situation is resolved soon. I can see your comments as well, so I'm hopeful that everybody else can. And if I'm talking too fast, just note that I've packed quite a bit into our time together. I probably will slow down just a little bit as we move forward. But if you need anything to be clarified, etc., do not hesitate to let me know. So I'm taking a little bit of a risk here, and I'm hopeful that I can pull this off without a real disruption to what we're doing. But I included here a link, and I'm going to incorporate it into the comments as well. If possible, I'm going to ask you to take a minute and to actually click on this link and take the self-assessment. I do this when I do this live, and I would love to be able to do this with you as well. The idea here is we're going into a topic or conversation about growth mindset, and I want to be sure that everybody is clear on their own mindset going into it. So please go ahead and do that for a moment. I am going to pause my talking to give you the mental bandwidth to do that. If you can just confirm, if somebody can confirm that you clicked on it, that it opens properly, that you're able to access the assessment. It's an online assessment, and it shouldn't take very long. That would be great. Okay, so somebody cannot open it. Nasia, thank you for letting me. Interesting, it doesn't open. Are you able to copy it perhaps and then just put it right into your, maybe you can just copy it. Let's see, I can dictate it to you. Let's see, you don't see it. Hopefully you see it on the screen at least that you have in front of you. All right, so it looks like this is not going to be a successful attempt at self-assessment. But what I will do, hopefully figure out a way to do this, I will try to get the link back. I'm gonna type it in again and see if there is a way. Maybe you can copy it. I put it into the chat. Here it is again. Does everybody see it? So if you can click on it, or maybe again, right click, copy link. Let's see if that's possible. Let me see if I can do it. Yeah, mine just opened. So that actually worked well for me. I'm wondering if there is a way by which we can get it to open for everybody. Yeah, Megan just put it in and maybe hers works better than mine. I'm not sure. All right. So I put it into I'm going to put it in the chat again because the chat is moving so fast that people probably are losing it. Okay, I just put it in. Brittany, thank you for putting it in as well. This is such an incredible group. You guys are awesome, keeping this going and helping us to find it. Yeah, another option is go to mindsetworks.com, and let's see if there's a way for me to guide you through this the old-fashioned way here. If you go to mindsetworks.com, let's see. Mindset Works, and then you go to, let's see if there's a way to do this. There's got to be an assessment search piece here somewhere. All right. Oh, right here. Oh, because I typed in the main thing. That's why. Sorry, just a moment. Let's see if blog.mindsetworks.com. Let's see if it gives us an opportunity. If you click on mindset in action, where does that take me? Sorry, I didn't go through the front end of the website to get here. Okay, so some people are taking it. Yeah, please take it if you can. Whoever can, great. Whoever can't, maybe you'll take it later. It's not imperative that we take it, but it's just going to be a tool that will help us better understand what mindset is and how we're doing. So I'm going to stop talking for a few moments so that you could do it without interruption. Okay, so there's a question here from Erica about not getting the results. It's interesting. I actually I don't think I get the results because I'm not logged into their website, so I'm not going to get it. I'm curious, Ignacio, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. Apologize if I didn't. Did you get results? Okay, so look at the end for your paragraph. You don't have to share what you got, but you're welcome to if you want to. I wouldn't suggest typing in an entire paragraph into the chat, but if you wanted to say just a brief description about where you are approximately. Yeah, and thank you, by the way, Stacy. That was great. You kind of preempted my request, and that is if there's anything besides for the results, anything in particular about the assessment that you found to be informative in particular, you didn't realize was part of the mindset conversation, you thought was very affirming for you, anything like that. All right, Erica, you are a growth mindset. Awesome. Okay. Hopefully most of us are, or at least are aspiring in that direction. And frankly, I don't even remember what the different categories are because I've only done the paper version since I usually do it with a live audience. But I knew that we were going to be needing the virtual version here. So Francesco, thank you very much. And again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anybody's name here. Growth mindset, fantastic. Patricia, I'm not sure I understand, but please feel free to elaborate. Thank you for your honest response, Tricia. And I'm going to keep going. I want you to keep finishing if you need to, and if you are not done, thank you for sharing. Scout and Ariel and many others who got the results and share what they received. This is excellent. Okay, and I'm hopeful that this was useful to you and kind of gives a framework or foundation for our conversation moving forward. What growth mindset is, how it works, and what we may need to be doing in order to move it forward. And by the way, just a good resource for you to have for your students as well. There's a lot, by the way, just another very brief aside. There are a lot of assessment tools available online, I think pretty much all for free or for nominal cost, that could give you tremendous insight about your students and give them tremendous insight for themselves. For example, modalities and intelligences and how we prefer to learn, like the VARC Learn assessment tool and some other tools that are out there. And oftentimes, if we understand what our profile is, what our learning preferences are, all these kinds of things, then we can, in many instances, just be better informed about how we interact with our students and how they self-advocate. So again, I do apologize for those of you who can't get in. Very sorry about that. I will try to link it up to everybody later so that hopefully you can figure out a way to do that. And let's see here, good foundation. Okay, so Florencia, thank you for sharing that as well. Openness and positivity, as well as support in our conversations, is going to be the way to go here. Okay, again, pardon me if I sounded all distracted, got a lot of moving parts here at home. And if the phone next to me rings, it's only because I can't turn it off since the entire family's here and may very well need it. So I appreciate your understanding in advance. We are going to move on, and we're going to start unpacking all this good stuff here. Okay, now I'd like to actually draw your attention, please, for a moment to the gray italicized text just under the title. And I'm curious to know if anyone would like to comment what you think this means and why it is important to emphasize the self-perception or self-theory component about mindset. Sorry. Okay. How you think about your own ability is good, Kim. And why is that important, everyone? Why is the issue here mainly about how you think about your own abilities? As opposed to other, let's call it external metrics. Okay, yes, Nasti, that is absolutely true. The way you look at yourself impacts your learning and growing abilities. We can only change ourselves, self-fulfilling prophecy. Great, great stuff here, everybody. Thank you. Keep it coming. Yeah, it's about self-perception because ultimately we are often our own biggest limitation. Now, I do want to be very clear. Growth mindset is not coming along and saying that everybody can become Albert Einstein and everybody can become Michael Jordan and everybody can become the very best at whatever it is. Minimally, what we're saying is that with the proper approach, you can improve your condition and move your own needle from where you are to where you want to go. Maybe not all the way, but certainly in a meaningful sense. So let's quickly go through the terminology here and the definition. So we're going to start from fixed to growth. I also want to point out that as you see in subsequent slides, sometimes fixed will be on the left, sometimes it'll be on the right, or vice versa, and or growth vice versa. That, you know, the idea here is that just look for the terminology more so than the location, and we'll find everything as we transition here. So fixed mindset is about believing that your basic qualities are fixed, believing that their abilities are fixed. You cannot do much about what you know, the intelligence that you have, the skills that you were given. They're gifted to you by God, the universe, whatever your way of looking at it is, and they're pretty much fixed, hence the term fixed mindset. Whereas a growth mindset is all about people believing that their basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. And I think that if you if you're honest with yourself, you recognize that there are times where we probably are in both areas, and maybe certain things that we get really fixed about. For example, maybe you think you're not good at math, or maybe you think you're just not a writer, or maybe in a sports sense, I'm not good at X, whatever that sport might be, or some other skill related task. And so we have this self perception, and that self perception often freezes us in our current reality. And we'll talk about why that's a challenge, not only in terms of learning, but in life in general, and what it is that we can do to shift our mindset. So let's unpack it a little bit more. Stacy, your question, how does age impact growth mindset? I don't know if I have a definitive answer for you, but I would tell you that the earlier that we can get our students to think differently about themselves, the better. Oh, and by the way, what I wanted to mention before, maybe I didn't develop it enough, the idea about taking those assessments, ultimately where I wanted to go with it is that we as educators need to do a really good job at demystifying the learning process as much as possible. So the more we help students understand how their brains work, how, what good study skills look like, what good note-taking skills look like, what, good test-taking skills look like, et cetera, and what it is that you need to be doing. Don't just assume that our students walk in ready to be students. And the same is true for their mindset. If they just knew that there's something called a mindset, and that there's a continuum with a mindset, and that the more growth oriented you are, the likelier it is that you will push through and that you will persevere in times of difficulty, and you will celebrate and appreciate the hard work, the more that those students will move forward with growth and be growth oriented. Some of them may come to this naturally, but many of us don't. So we as teachers need to be talking to our students about it, let them know it exists. There's a famous TED Talk with Sir Ken Robinson, maybe you've seen it before, where he talks about a young girl who eventually became extremely famous and successful. I forget the name, but she was involved in choreography for some of the greatest Broadway shows ever produced. And when she was a young girl, she struggled terribly. And he tells the story of how she was diagnosed in the school, maybe with, I don't know what they called it at the time, but basically they said that she was struggling and she needed to see a professional. And ultimately, the mother brings the daughter to this psychologist and discusses the problem. The psychologist tells the mother to go outside and leaves the music on. And eventually they see that the daughter, who was fidgeting in school and really couldn't concentrate on all of that, just had these natural inclinations towards music and eventually became a very successful, like I said before, professional in drama, art, music, etc. And the comment that he makes is that, today we'd call it ADHD, but back then we never heard of such a thing, so we couldn't diagnose it as such, right? So oftentimes it's just a matter of knowing what things are, what they're called, giving it a name, and then of course taking action around it to move us to a better place. Okay, so this is the request I have for you. I hope you can see all 8 of these on either side. Now the fix is on the left and growth is on the right. I would like to take a couple of minutes without me talking for you to review the lists. And here's what I'd like for you to do. I'd like you to choose the 3 on the left that you feel most negatively contribute to a fixed mindset. In other words, the 3 things that are the biggest challenges, the things that most strongly contribute to a fixed mindset. I'll just leave it at that. Hopefully that was clearly enough stated. And the same is true on the right side for a growth mindset. What are the 3 qualities that if we could kind of bottle it and distribute it to everybody, would you think are most positive? Now, instead of commenting on it right away, I'll tell you what I want you to do with it. So just bear with me for a moment. Just make a mental note, maybe write it down. Again, the 3 most negative on the left side, the 3 most positive on the right side, but organize them in a rank fashion. So the most positive on the right again, put number 1. The second most positive, put number 2. And the third most positive, put a number 3. And the same on the left. The one that is most negatively correlated, in your opinion, to a fixed mindset, give that a 1, etc. Let's take a few moments to review them, to comment, and then eventually I'll ask you to put it into the chat. Okay, so once again, what I'm going to ask you to do, let's start with the fixed mindset, please. Choose or incorporate the one. You could do it one of two ways. You could either do it by number, with the top one being number 1 and the bottom one being number 8, or you could type it in by the actual description. I think number might be easier if you don't mind counting, so it'll be easier for me to eyeball it. So far, it looks like the one that most respondents are finding to have the greatest impact on a fixed mindset is number 1, believes intelligence and talent are fixed. What about the rest of you? Again, for now, please just include the one that you think is most negative. Lots of 1s and 3s, seeing some 2s and 7s. Just watching as the numbers come in. Thank you, everybody. Keep coming. Okay, got a couple of 5s in there as well. By the way, I'm sure you could imagine we could probably spend the rest of our time together just hanging out on this slide here and unpacking all of it and why these are so negative, but they're all so much part of our life. And I would argue, by the way, and you could decide if I'm right here or just a theory, that I think that with social media, especially with some of the platforms, like I'm thinking Instagram, but it could be Snapchat or some of the other platforms that your students are on in particular. I'm a little bit less knowledgeable when it comes to what our teenagers are doing specifically. But either way, the idea that we're always putting our best foot forward and constantly have to talk about how we are successful rather than expressing our challenges, I think that that does contribute to a lot of this as well. Unbelievable. Look at this feedback. Okay, so 1, believes intelligence and talent are fixed. Number 2 is commonly mentioned, believes effort is fruitless. No matter what I do, it's not going to make a difference. Number 3, it frames us as who we are. It defines us. That failure defines us. That's a very powerful one. 4 was mentioned a couple of times, hides flaws, avoids challenges, ignores feedback, and on the list. And number 7, views feedback as personal criticism, right? If you tell me that I did something wrong, I view that as criticism rather than as an opportunity for growth. And again, some of that may just be in how we package it. We may just have to start telling our students more and more, what I'm about to tell you is intended to help you grow as opposed to anything else. And once you set the tone, then of course you share the feedback. And another piece of it, frankly, is the more that we can demonstrate that we really love our students, we really care about them, we want them to be successful, and we're deeply committed. So whatever we share is shared with the intent of them improving, not shared with the intent of them somehow feeling less about themselves. So let's pivot now and talk about the right side. Many of you may find that the right and the left are pretty much parallel. There are a lot of similarities, but I'm going to ask you to again share at this point what you feel to be the most positive. And if you could just, again, bottle it, do lots of it, have it be everywhere in your classroom and beyond, it would just be a fantastic thing. Okay, so a little bit of commentary for me as you're filling it in. And again, this is fantastic. Number 2, I saw a lot of believes effort is the path. I have to move my thing to read it fully. The path to mastery, believes mistakes are part of learning. Number 3, right? If students understand that they're on a journey, mistakes are inevitable. The most successful people in the world, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but giving them real life examples. Oftentimes, our kids think that the greatest people were born the greatest people, super smart, super skilled, super whatever, and they don't realize about practice, the importance of it. They don't realize that people fought back from adversity. They don't realize the many, many challenges, and that in many cases, they're actually ahead of where some other great and very famous people were at their particular stage, but those others really worked through it, and they could be the same thing, if not greater, if they just persevered as well. So our messaging, again, is so, so important. And I'm really glad that you've taken the time to engage with me on this slide. Let's move now to another one. Just want to show you what this looks like in our language. Here, you're going to notice that the slide flips. So let's take a look at this one. Hold on one second. There we go. So now the growth mindset is on the left and the fixed mindset is on the right. If you see any phraseology here that you actually hear from your students, directly or implied, feel free to type it into the comment, whether it's a fixed statement or a growth statement. Okay, so more of the negative. I can't do it. I don't like to be challenged. I give up. I'm either good at it or I'm not. When I'm frustrated, I give up. All of this is on the fixed side. A couple there. They're going so fast I can't even read them. Okay, a couple of them I like a challenge, but most of them are clearly on the other side. And again, if you just put something like this up on the board and had a conversation with your students from time to time about these are things that they say, maybe even ask your students, do you remember saying anything like this or thinking anything like this? Yeah, by the way, very important, Lori, I think the younger ones typically do tend to have more of a growth mindset than as we get older. In general, self-confidence diminishes over time. It's a fascinating thing, but it's not surprising considering how many frustrations we encounter over the years. Excuse me. So yeah, putting this language up there in terms that the kids can understand, and if you need to simplify it for your younger students or make it even more advanced for your older students, whatever it is. But again, lift the curtain, open it up, have conversation, let them know what they're really thinking when they say these things, and give them opportunity to shift their language. Because oftentimes, if you just shift what you're saying, even if you don't sincerely mean it in the moment, it will shift your physiology, it'll shift your mind. There's so much here. Well, keep those comments coming. Again, I'm focusing on a bunch of things. Hopefully you're focusing on the screen as well, but at the same time, do keep eyes on the chat because the gold is there. Really, that's where the biggest contributions are. Thank you so very much, everybody, for continuing to share this information. So let's now, I'd love to show you, and I'm going to test it, make sure that you can hear it. I want you to hear this recording from Carol Dweck, who is the founder, if you will, or really the primary researcher in much of the mindset research. She's the author of the book Mindset, and I'd love for you to hear her presentation. If for whatever the reason the audio does not come through or doesn't play, please let me know in the chat and we'll figure something out. Okay, are you able to hear me? Okay, you're able to hear me. Okay, so then let's see here if I can quickly fix this. If not, we're going to skip it. Let me go to, I'm just seeing what it is on my system, audio settings. Okay, it may not be able to do anything for that end. Okay, so I'm going to probably have to share it with you, but she's really very good. And I just want to see if there's a way by which the video would work. No, it looks like it's just video for me, not video to play on this. Okay, I wasn't sure. I figured I'd give it a shot. We're going to move on without it, but I'll try to share the link with you because I do want you to be able to see from her directly what it is that growth mindset is all about. So I'm going to move forward here. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled program. Now you can hear me, is that correct? Just confirming before I move on. All right, excellent. Thank you so very much. So let's move into some practical skills that you can be using immediately as you go on. And remember, I am going to be asking you at the end of our presentation, which is just in a few minutes, relatively speaking, for your biggest takeaway. So I'm hopeful that you are being mindful of that already. What have you learned already? You don't have to answer this. You could, but you don't have to answer in the chat. But in your mind, and maybe jot it down, what have you already learned that I have shared with you, whether it's about mindset, about how to teach mindset, about how to think about it and utilize it, whatever it is, what are some things that you have already learned that you can actionably apply to your work today, or the next time you engage with your students, or frankly, even as you are preparing for your next engagement with your students? Okay? Yeah, the posters is a great idea. By the way, Marianne, if I may add to that, one of the things I often like to ask participants to do when I do this live is to create your own. And then you can hang it. Take a growth mindset message, create it like your own artistic rendition. Many people don't feel that they are artistic, but that's another mindset issue we have to conquer. And then you could have your students do it as well. And oftentimes you can have them create it. Maybe you make a booklet out of it. Maybe you put it up on the wall. And when you're hearing fixed mindset statements, or you're sensing your students are not putting their best foot forward, you can bring them to the wall. You can have them touch the different messages. You can have somebody come up and read it. Maybe even every day you focus on one of those posters or messages, just as a way of keeping the focus on it. Because oftentimes, like anything else, we get excited about something, we do it for a bit, and then we stop. This is a way to kind of keep the excitement going on, and doing so in a way that is not just acceptable, but something that you look forward to. You know, like my daughter last night, she's in high school. She's a senior actually, and they've been doing a lot of growth mindset in their school. So when my wife mentioned to my daughter that I'm doing a webinar today on growth mindset, she did that big eye roll thing that teenagers often do, but not surprising, because it probably has become so much the conversation that it just became like in her mind, oh, another growth mindset thing. So we have to think about ways to do this in a manner that is age appropriate, will maintain the kind of focus without students or you kind of pushing back after a while and saying, oh, I can't handle it, no more growth mindset, it's making me crazy, this kind of thing. Okay, so let's keep going, and let's talk about things we can do. So number one, we've already mentioned this before. Keep the comments, Jamie, keep going, everybody, Teresa, etc. I'm sorry I'm not reading it with you, but again, I'm mindful of the clock here. And soon I'm going to be like that teacher who's got a 40-minute period with 38 minutes already expired and 2 minutes left for lots of instruction. So I'm hopeful we don't get there, but we do need to keep moving, and I apologize for not paying closer attention to your comments as we do this. Okay, so we need to teach this. We can't just assume our students will have it. Number one, it's important that we normalize their struggle. Let children know that this is normal. They're not deficient. They're not weird. They're not stupid. They're not limited. I mean, obviously we all have limitations, but the idea is that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with them just because they are struggling. Thank you for mentioning grit, by the way, Tricia. We're not going to discuss it at this session, but I will hopefully be able to at least reference it in part 2. Teach them to accept struggle is the second one, right? That students need to know that there's something about sticking with it. We talked about grit, the idea of persevering, right? Let them know that struggle is part of it, normalize it, teach about it, and then inspire them to push further. You've all seen those images of the brain with the muscles and the barbells, right? That every time you push your brain out of your comfort zone, your brain grows new connections and you get smarter. So your brain technically is not a muscle, but in that respect, it has muscle-like qualities. It builds dendrites and new connections and neuroplasticity, all sorts of great things that happen. And again, it's about repetition, it's about pushing, it's about expanding. And if you do see Dr. Dweck's video, she does show there, for example, the brain activity for a growth mindset student as opposed to a fixed mindset student. And one thing I just want to mention here that I don't know is included in the PowerPoint elsewhere, because I was assuming that you'd see it in the video, is that one of the real reasons as to why fixed mindset is so dangerous, and I really hope, I'm going to slow down here because I really want everybody to get this point really clear, right? The idea of being fixed mindset, it's not necessarily that it's going to prevent you from learning anything, right? Many students who are very, very capable have a fixed mindset. The idea is that we tend to want to preserve the identity that we have created if we have a fixed mindset, which means as follows. If I hit up against a challenge and that challenge is something that may compromise my reputation, may compromise my social standing, may compromise how others in my class and elsewhere look at me, I'm going to shut down and I'm not going to try, because it's always better to be bad than to be stupid. That's my language. It's not anybody else's. But the idea here, and that's typically why we'll often have students who struggle academically who will act out, because they'd rather be thrown out or disciplined for misbehavior than to be disciplined for lack of knowledge, for incapacity. It's a huge difference where kids are extremely self-conscious. They always are assessing themselves against their peers, the class clown concept, et cetera. Oftentimes that comes from, yeah, we want attention, but it's often driven because of the fact that we don't feel we can get attention elsewhere or in a different way, or quote, a better way, right? Bad than dumb, same concept. Okay, beautiful. So back to fixed mindset. Students who have historically been told that they are smart, we're going to get to this in a second. In fact, let's see if we can get there now. No, we'll get there in a moment. If they're told that they're smart and we praise them in their intelligence, when their intelligence gets tested, they stop exerting effort, because again, their reputation is now at stake. So let's talk about this more in detail. So when we praise, this is probably the single biggest action point for the moment. Praise the actions, not the traits. So don't praise intelligence, praise efforts and strategies and focus and perseverance. It's almost the same thing as saying to a student, I like the way you're seated, instead of saying, and here's the better way, I like the way that you are seated fully in your chair, your hand is raised, and describe more in detail what it is that you want, so that the student will want to emulate more of that same type of behavior. Okay, so instead of saying, oh, you are so smart, which a student has no control over, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but it's not going to drive success moving forward, focus on the process. We want to replace person praise with process praise. Now let's take a look and see, what does that look like in practical terms? Excuse me. So on the left side, we have the person praise, which is what we're trying to avoid. And on the right side, excuse me again, you have the process praise, which is more about what the student did. And I'm curious to get your opinion. Why do you think, you could take any of them, why do you think the version on the right side, they're all color-coded to match up, is a preferred approach than the one on the left side? Take a moment and look at it and see if you can clarify in your own mind what the preferences are and why they're considered to be the better choice. Okay, Lori, thank you. Specific feedback, but specific feedback about, okay, so praises their effort and process, their explanation of why a student did well. Okay, more intrinsic focus, defining the behavior. What about motivation moving forward? Any thoughts on that? Okay, encourages perseverance, right? Seems more fixed on the side. Yep, that's not just about their abilities, clear and meaningful. Now, I do want to mention one thing. Keep the comments coming, by the way. This is great. I do want to mention there are teachers who ask me inevitably at every session, and I can't say I have a perfect answer for them. Well, what about the student who really didn't study hard? Right? What about the student who this all comes easy to? And so I think that there's a lot to unpack with that, and that's probably something you're thinking about as well. Minimally, I would still focus on the effort that they made, but part of what we need to do, and this is, again, a bit of a sidebar, a bit of a soapbox. We will talk about this hopefully in future offerings, because I am planning to do a couple of these every week for the foreseeable future, so long as we're dealing with corona and cabin fever and all of the issues that we're struggling with here. One of the things that we need to think about is, are we sufficiently challenging our students on a regular basis? Right, we'll talk about Bloom's taxonomy in a future session, and part of understanding Bloom's or other taxonomies is, am I meeting my students' needs fully? Am I giving them the kind of work that will take them beyond knowledge and comprehension, for example, that will challenge them in a way that will make them really learn more, feel better about themselves, et cetera, But for those students at that point, yeah, it actually is going to be real work that they're going to be required to do. So if we view all of our students in the same way, we treat them all the same way, there are going to be students for whom the work that we give is relatively easy and will not feel challenging. And then this argument is a harder thing to say. But if we do give them work that is appropriate for them and they're consistently challenged as a result of it, then you really are helping them in many ways. I'm just going to eyeball the comments here. Yeah, challenged at their level. Thank you, Shannon. Okay, really work hard, asking kids, what's your next step? Excellent, Lori. Thank you. And by the way, parents have the same issue as well, because oftentimes, again, a little bit of a sidebar, but very quickly, kids will push back and say, I already did the work. I don't need to do more. Parents will say, why are you giving my child more work? They did everything that you asked them to do. And part of it is creating an environment, a mindset, again, a framework for your students and your parents. Your job as teacher, in fact, we're going to change the name. You're no longer a teacher, you're a facilitator of learning. And you're a facilitator of learning at the level that your students are. Your job is not to move them from everybody's point A to point B. If we think of this almost as like a standards-based learning approach, everybody's on a continuous journey. So whether you're struggling and you're not there yet, which is Carol Dweck's language, or you're much further ahead and you're ready for the next challenge, you just need to be moved further along. And that's your job every day, to think about, how can I move Johnny and Jenny and any other, whatever the name, how do you move all of your students further along from where they are and give them the challenge that's appropriate for them? So this is all really great stuff here. Yeah, I like that. If you're using workshop approach and you're kind of really trying to differentiate, that's going to meet a lot of this as well. Okay, so briefly a review before we move on. The main thing is focus on process praise rather than person. Don't praise intelligence, praise what they did. Another one, and we actually have a few different components here about modeling growth mindset. When you model, you will typically produce much deeper learning. And if you are the example, your students will typically follow it. So let's move up the steps 1, 2, to 3. Number 1, you want to demonstrate what it looks like. Okay. So the idea here is that you actually walk the talk, walk the walk, talk the, you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. Okay. So you're demonstrating what it looks like. You give them examples of where you struggled, which kind of ties into number 2, whether it's a personal story or what happened this morning, or you say, students, yesterday I was preparing the science lesson and I encountered this and this difficulty, or I realized that I didn't understand it when I taught it yesterday nearly as well as I needed to, because so many great questions were asked and I didn't know the answer to them. So this is what I did. And this is how I felt about myself initially before I started to say, well, it's not really that way. Kind of like literally take them behind the curtain and demystify. Same thing as what I talked about before with the great, Albert Einsteins of the world. Students often feel that everybody on this call and all of our colleagues throughout the world were born teachers and born with full content mastery, and that we had everything in the back of our hand, and that we didn't have any struggle to get to where we are in this, even the lesson planning or anything similar. But if we share, this is what happened, this is what I thought, this is how I overcame it, in general, these are the thoughts that come into my mind, and this is what I do about it. And we demonstrate it, we talk about it. We say, I can do this, right? It's really hard for me. I just want you to know it's really hard for me when this, and this happens, but I know that I can do it, and this is how I approach it. And the more you unpack it, the more you take them behind the curtain, yeah, thank you, Lindsay, the more ultimately they will start to see things differently. Sharing personal stories and anecdotes, right? Maybe once a week you share a story that has a growth mindset orientation to it. Tell about people who struggled and how they overcame it. And here's a very powerful one, number 3, that it's available online. I'd be happy to share. We'll have to figure out how to do that. But if you have your students actually write a letter to a future student, an imaginary student that's in the same 5th grade that they're in, and talk about their struggle. When I was in 5th grade, I found that the math work was particularly difficult. Specifically, I struggled with, I don't know what, talk about fraction, whatever it is that the student may struggle with. And this is what I did, or this is what I would suggest that you do. And if you follow these steps, you will become, stronger. You will feel better, this kind of thing. We all know that we learn best when we teach. We all know that we take our guard down when we don't have to worry about opening up ourselves and becoming vulnerable. And if we create vulnerability with an imaginary friend or a future student, where we're taking we as in the students now, are taking the teaching role, the guiding role, the idea of this is what I did or this is what you should do, it's going to be super powerful for them. And they're going to view it much differently than kind of like an objective conversation that you're having with your students, right? Deborah, the next year's class, beautiful. Oh, what a great idea. And by the way, that's just a great idea in general, whether you're doing cooperative learning, anything. If you can create like a jigsaw method, a fishbowl, or any way by which to model what you want, sharing ideas with future students is very powerful. I wish we could stay here, but we're going to move on a little bit more. Actually, I'm going to skip this slide and maybe build it in to our next one. And what I want to do here is as follows. I want to tell you what's coming up. I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you have. So if you have any, maybe you can start putting them into the chat. I'll try to get to them as quickly as I can. This registration link that you used for today was specific for today. So you are going to need to register separately. I'm going to see if I can quickly grab the link and put it into the chat as well. I try to make it really simple. So I made it a bit.ly link, and the link is here for you to hopefully be able to access. And you could register for our next webinar, again, growth mindset oriented, and just going to be helpful, I think, for you to kind of like learn additional skills. We'll talk about them in a minute. So what we're going to do is review the core elements of mindset so everybody's super clear. What is mindset? What is growth? What is fix? What does it look like? What does it sound like? We'll add additional strategies and applications that will take this conversation further, including the slide that I just skipped in the interest of time. And we're also going to talk about developing new pathways for learning and retention. Because again, part of the way we view ourselves is based on past experiences. And if I don't learn so well, or if I don't hold on to information, or so I think, then my mindset is going to be very limited. But if I feel that I can push forward, whether it's through neuroplasticity, creating new connections, all these kinds of things, yeah, it takes you to another Zoom page. It should take you to the registration page. I'm hopeful that it does. I'm going to actually put it in there now. Let me see what happens when I put it in and see if there's any problem. If there is, we'll have to figure out another way to do this. Bear with me for a moment. Let me see what happens. Oh, it takes me the actual Zoom meeting as well. Interesting. That's a problem. Okay, let me see if I can get the other, real quick. Let me see if I can get the other link in here. I'm going to put it into the, hold on 1 second, please, everybody. Please bear with me while I access this so we can all find it. Let me get in there. All right, let me try this. Hang on one moment. So it's not going to be the nice clean link that I just sent you, but let's see if this one works. Can somebody try this and tell me, please, if you can access the registration this way? That would be very helpful. I'm going to keep talking in the meantime about what's coming up. And if this works, then we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy. And I'll try to even create a bit link before I hang up from the call today. Okay, so let's wrap up here. Other things, by the way, that I'm planning beyond this week, I want to talk about active learning techniques. Number one, for online instruction, which is critical. How do we keep everybody engaged even when they're not physically in our classroom? How do we do it when they're in our classroom? Clarifying learning objectives. You cannot see the links that I sent to the chat. That's strange. So I'm not really sure what else. Is anybody able to see it? Let me try it again. I just sent it a second time. Nobody can see it. This is weird. Okay, so bear with me for a moment. I'm going to try plan B here. Let's see if I can do this as a bit.ly real quick. And that will hopefully allow me to just dictate minimally what there's a lot going on my computer. Let's see, it looks to be a little bit slow at the moment. All right, so I'm going to try to send everybody an email, so do not worry about it. Okay, other stuff coming up, Bloom's taxonomy. We talked about a little bit this before, the idea of what different learning abilities and whatnot, different learning levels, if you will. Okay. How do we participate in other webinars? Well, you're going to get the links. So hopefully you'll be able to do that, Sabrina. And I hope I answered your question, at least for the moment. Classroom management, proactive and reactive strategies, so much good stuff out there. And I do hope to deliver that all to you. So I hope that this was a great start. So here's your test as we start to wrap up, because I definitely don't want to deprive anybody of your recess. What, if we can, in your own mind, minimally define these terms? Can you do so? Please write yes or no. Like, for example, if you go to your spouse or significant other after this call and they say, well, what did you learn during this conversation? And you say, well, we talked about mindset. And they say to you, well, what was that? Are you going to be able to respond in a constructive way, in a manner that, hold on a second, I'm doing the, okay. It's so interesting. When I click on it, hold on one moment, I apologize. I'm just trying to see again if I can. Oh, so that's the link to join. No. Oh, I know why. Okay. Okay, because I didn't, okay, sorry. I didn't click on registration required. That's my mistake. I'm doing it right now. Bear with me, hold on for a moment. Okay. Now, can we try that again and see if this time, if it works? Let's see here. I'm going to type it in again. Now, when you click on it, are you able to, let's see here. Is it able to work? Does it work? Can you just, I don't know what everyone's saying yes to. I apologize. If you could click on it and take us to the registration, then that would be great. Okay, link works. Yay. Okay, link works. Okay, so I'm going to put that out there again before as the last comment here, so don't worry. All right, can we offer multiple examples of each? We'll just say yes. Okay, can we list some of the benefits of doing this? Of course you can. Okay, link is coming again. Hang on, I know a lot of people, the chat is going so fast here. Can you discuss ways to develop student mindsets with yourself, with your peers, with your students? Can you bring this back to your school and become the ambassador for growth mindset forever and ever and all eternity? Of course, the answer is yes, because we did such a fantastic job here. All right, so I'm really hopeful that was helpful. And of course, here is my, let's see here. Did I include my, oh, I got to read this to you very quickly before we go, because I want to leave you on a super high. I hope you don't mind. Okay, here we go. One of the best stories I've ever heard about spilled milk and the lessons of making a mess comes from a famous research scientist who made several very important medical breakthroughs. A newspaper reporter once asked him why he thought he was able to be so much more creative than the average person. What set him so far apart from others? He responded that, in his opinion, it all came from an experience with his mother, which occurred when he was about 2 years old. He had been trying to remove a bottle of milk from the refrigerator when he lost his grip on the slippery bottle and it fell, spilling its contents all over the kitchen floor, a veritable sea of milk. When his mother came into the kitchen, instead of yelling at him, giving him a lecture, or punishing him, she said, "Robert, what a great and wonderful mess you have made. I've rarely seen such a huge puddle of milk. While the damage has already been done, would you like to get down and play in the milk for a few minutes before we clean it up?" Indeed, he did. After a few minutes, his mother said, "You know, Robert, whenever you make a mess like this, eventually you have to clean it up and restore everything to its proper order. So how would you like to do that? We could use a sponge, a towel, or a mop. What do you prefer?" He chose the sponge, and together they cleaned up the spilled milk. His mother then said, "You know, what we have here is a failed experiment in how to effectively carry a big milk bottle with two tiny hands. Let's go out in the backyard and fill the bottle with water and see if you could discover a way to carry it without dropping it." The little boy learned that if he grasped the bottle at the top near the lip with both hands, he could carry it without dropping it. What a wonderful lesson. This renowned scientist then remarked that it was at that moment he knew he didn't need to be afraid to make mistakes. Instead, he learned that mistakes were just opportunities for learning something new, which is, after all, what scientific experiments are all about. They're simply that, just experiments to see what happens. Even if the experiment doesn't work, we usually learn something valuable from it. So a powerful lesson from the spilled milk. Finally, this is my contact information in case you want to be in touch. I really hope all of you gain something meaningful from this conversation. If you could just put in your chat right now one thing that you learned that you can take back that's going to hopefully positively impact your work and the work of your students and your peers, that would be super helpful for me to give me a sense of what worked for you. And I really do hope that you will all, or at least as many of you as possible, will register for the next presentation, which is going to be linked up here again in the chat by me. Okay, please make sure that you grab that link. It'll also come in the follow-up email. I'm making posters. Thank you, Mackenzie. Anyone else would love to hear from you. Therese, always learn from our mistakes. Okay, this is good stuff. Okay, the slides, it took pictures of the team, slides, lots of info, like to share, shift of attitude, unbelievable. Okay, I'm gonna keep this on. I'm probably gonna mute myself at this point, but you can continue to go ahead and to fill the chat with your takeaways. Thank you all so very much. I'm feeling like supercharged and super depleted at the same time, because this was like an hour of supercharged energy at a time that hopefully all of us needed it. And I'm really glad that you joined and kind of shared with each other, because that's really what we need more than anything else, I think, at this time, is keeping connected, even if it has to be virtual for now, understanding that there's a community out there of similar people who are struggling in the same kind of way, that can all, if we put our heads to it, find ways to add value, to encourage, to support, and to find ways to continue to grow. So thank you for taking the risk. Many of you don't know me or had no idea who I was, but you showed up anyway, and I thank you for that. That means you put your trust in me, and I hope I delivered on that trust. And I certainly hope that we'll have opportunity to engage further, and maybe, God willing, one day in person as well. So thank you again, all. I'm going to be wrapping up the call now, and we'll hopefully stay in touch with you via email and other ways. Have an awesome day. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye now.